Hey guys, welcome to part 8 of the survival series. Now I know everybody's been waiting for me to get fully back on track with this, and this is the first one with a lot of things that are going to be coming in the future. So we're going to be looking into mining some stone, and we've done a couple of bits which it's going to be very similar to the tree chopping in a way. So we're going to have some objects in the world which are going to represent the things that you can mine from, and then from there, with mining them, you're going to be able to detect which objects they are and then make some resources which you'll be able to collect from them. So it's going to instantiate those objects, very similarly, as I say, to the trees. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to take this script from when I redefined the tree chopping. So what we're going to do is that this one's on my main camera. I've added it to my package that I've uploaded to my website. It seemed like it wasn't there before, so I've uploaded it now in case people have missed out on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to open Raycast Chop, and we'll open that up in MonoDevelop. It'll be in part 4.5 for redefining the tree chopping. You'll notice that what we do is we have a tree variable. We do a raycast, which looks for the tag of tree. It finds off, auto fills in the tree variable that we've got up here by finding that the collider which we hit when we allow it through. So it's obviously only ever going to be tree when we actually hit the collider, so it's always going to be for the objects that we want. Then it finds the player control script, and if we press the left click and we can swing, we'll take some life off the tree by looking at the tree that we found and its script, which is tree controller. So we're going to do something very similar with a rock or stone. So I'll go through this first of all. I've made 2 extra prefabs for this one. Similarly with the tree, is I've got one called stone and then one called rock, and there's 2 differences here. One of the stone here, one of them has just a box collider, and then we make sure that we've got the tag of stone on this. So this is going to be our main one, which we're going to mine from. So it's going to be split into smaller rocks, let's say. Now I can leave that in the scene for now, I guess. And now my smaller one, which is just going to be named a rock, you can name it Pebble, whatever you want to know to make sure that you remember it. But this one has got a rigid body on it, and it uses gravity. So then when it gets instantiated or created, it'll fall to the ground. Obviously you can change this up any way you like. That also has a box collider. That box collider just allows us to, deal with it, and it's quite an effective way to put on a collision on it without having to use a mesh collider, because that's going to be more taxing on the game engine. So we've got those 2 prefabs. We're going to add the script. So we're going to create one script which will be added to the actual large stone itself, which will control spawning of the little rock and dealing with its health and such and such. So first of all, we'll go back into the Raycast Chop, and we're going to write the sort of raycast element to be able to detect when we've hit the rock itself. So what we're going to do is, below here you can see that one of our last encapsulating statements is the second one down, and we're going to go below here. Then we'll write else if open brackets hit dot collider dot game object dot tag is equal to, in quotes, stone. We'll close it up, add 2 curly brackets below. Then what we'll say, like just similarly with up here, we'll change, but before we actually move over to that, I'll write another variable called stone and set that as type game object. So now, as we've done up here, we'll do stone equals hit dot collider dot game object, and we'll close it up and add a semicolon. Then below here again, we'll say player anim equals game object dot find open brackets in quotes fps arms underscore axe at idle, or whatever your arms might be called. Close up those quotes. We'll say dot get component open brackets player control and add a semicolon. With this, you don't have to use the game object.find because it's a slower way of dealing with finding objects. So what you can actually do is just hard code it in like we've done at the top here by adding game objects and such. Then what we're going to do below there, if I go down here a little bit, I'll say that if input dot get key down, open brackets in quotes, fire1, close up the quotes and the brackets. Then we'll say and player anim dot can swing is equal to true. Then we'll add 2 curly brackets below there and say that stone dot get component, open brackets. Now this is the script that we're going to create, so we're going to call it stone controller dot stone health, which we're going to have as the variable, minus equals 1, and we'll add a semicolon there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to save that out, and you'll notice that all these curly brackets encapsulate the statements that we need. But you'll notice that I've used an else if this time, so it'll always check the if statements that within it, and then it'll always else is just a better way of managing your statements. So if it's not this, do this if, instead of writing a new if statement every time. So when we go back into Unity, it'll probably complain about us that we can't find such and such script and this and that and the other. But what we'll do this time is we'll go and create, and we'll go JavaScript, and we'll actually write stone controller like we wrote it in the script. We'll open up that, I'll double click that in MonoDevelop. When we've opened that up, you'll see the other script side by side if you need to reference it. What we'll do is I'll delete those 2 functions to start with. Then I'll write a variable called stone health like we had in here, and we'll set that equal, I set that as an integer equal to 5. Then I'll have a variable called rock and have that as type transform, and have a variable called stone and have that as type game object. Then we'll have function start, open brackets, and then 2 curly brackets below. Then we'll say stone equals this dot game object. It's so we don't have to actually drag this object itself into its slot to reference it. So it'll just find it itself without us having to do anything. Then we're going to write a function update. So function update, 2 brackets, then 2 curly brackets below. Then we'll say that if stone health is ever less than or equal to 0, then we'll add 2 curly brackets below, and we'll say destroy stone, and that's going to have 2 capitals for each word. It's going to have 2 brackets and a semicolon, so we're going to call a new function here, so it'll only do it every time we will do that if statement. Then we'll write another function called destroy stone like we did up there. We'll add 2 brackets, then 2 curly brackets below. Then we'll write destroy open brackets, then stone, and you will see we needed the variable of itself so we could destroy it. And then what we're going to do is going to say variable position colon vector 3 equals vector 3 open brackets random dot range open brackets minus 1.0 comma 1.0. Then we'll add a bracket there, add a comma. Then we'll say random dot range open brackets minus 1.0 comma 1.0. Close that up and we'll add a semicolon. But make sure you'll need another bracket at the end to encapsulate the last little bit. Then what we'll do is we'll say we'll instantiate open brackets rock comma stone dot transform dot position plus vector 3 open bracket 0 comma 0 comma 0. Then we'll say plus position comma quaternion dot identity. close that up, add a semicolon. Now what I'll do is I will copy that line again, and I'm just going to paste it in 2 times below, because we're going to just change the way the other ones spawn. So what I'm going to do is in this vector 3, I'm just going to change these to 2 and 2, and this bottom one to 5 and 5. Then we're going to save it. So what all this is doing is each rock is going to have a portion of health, and then the only time that we ever attack it, click on it, do whatever, we're going to lose one of those pieces of health every time we can swing at it. We're setting the actual stone to find itself. If the health ever goes below 0, so it's essentially going to be destroyed, we'll call another function which is called destroy stone. We'll destroy that stone, we'll create a position which is in a random range between 1 and -1, which is just not very far, and then we're going to instantiate a rock, which is going to be our small object, at the stone's position, plus a vector, which is just going to be to make them spawn slightly further apart from each other. But you've got to make sure, I made a little mistake, that instantiate needs a capital I, and I'd missed that out on them. So make sure that you do check little things like that. We'll save back out and we'll go into Unity. Now once we're back here, what you can do is, if you've made your big stone into a prefab, by just going, you can right click or you can click there and say prefab, and you can drag your object as many times out as you want. Your stone, you can actually add your stone controller to that prefab, and then within your scene, all your prefabs that you'd prefab there will change according to what your prefab is that you've made in your scene. So you can see that I've added that script here, and it will change every single rock or big stone in my scene. So what we can do within the prefab for the stone itself, what we can do is we can add the rock prefab here to it, and it'll have changed it in here. But we need to make sure that we select the stone prefab within the project and add the rock prefab. If you've created one, make sure you create one to add it to the actual inspector slot. So now we've got the controller for the stone on here, and then on our main camera we've got the raycast chop, which will look for trees and stone now. Oh, one quick thing to mention actually is when we're back into Unity, we need to make sure that it's actually get button down, not key, because a mouse click is an actual button itself. What I'll do for now is I'll make sure the stone health is actually equal to 1 for all my prefabs, so we can only have to click it once to make it spawn the objects that we want. So before I actually do that, I'll get rid of that rock so it's out of the way. We've made sure that we've got the tag of stone. We'll go towards it, we'll give it a click, and it'll have just spawned all our objects in front of each other like it's done. So what we can do then is we can select this prefab, we can duplicate this, say 3 times, and then we can press play our game, and what we can do is that if I click that, it'll have made ourselves 1, then there, and then here. So now you can see that we've got as many stones as we actually want, and it will instantiate those rock prefabs that we've got in every instance. So you can change those depending on what objects that you've got within your scene. So there was a way to add another element to your game, so add another portion of collecting. Now I know that was using an axe rather than a pickaxe, say, and we haven't changed the animation, so I might go into showing you how to swap up the arms and animation model and swap to sort of like a pickaxe style animation to be able to do the mining for that. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Cheers.